expected from us. We couldn't finish it, but before we start this day, I just want to recap what we did on last Saturday, probably because we were rushing at the last moment. We'll start with this BL because this is one of the, right, we'll start with the first one is the, we start with the component or the contents of the international trade. So we had two parties, one the buyer and the seller, or the importer and exporter. Then there is a movement of goods from one side to another side. Then movement of fees, or what we call the consideration, from other side to the other side. And the last and the most important is change of ownership, right? So with that only the international trade comes to a conclusion, right? Now what we were trying to do on last Saturday was to capture two of those. One is the movement of the goods and the other one is the payment from the importer to the exporter. So when you talk about the movements of the goods from the exporting country, it has to go to the importing country. So while the movement is taking place, what we call the delivery of the goods taking place, there may be a lot of misunderstanding between the importer and the exporter as to three important things. And we have put that into three broader categories. One is the obligations. So who has to do and what? As an exporter or a shipper, what is his obligations when the goods are started moving from his end to the importer's end, right? Then along with that, there may be some costs involved, like clearing the customs formalities, and if there's any taxes or duties on exports and so on. So definitely there are some costs involved. Now then, who bears the costs, right? And the third and the foremost is the risks, where the risk passes from the exporter to the importer at what point of time. So these things, there can be, this can lead to a misunderstanding between the importer and the exporter as to on this OCR, obligation, costs, and the risks. Right now, simply because we are dealing with two jurisdictions, one in India, the exporter, or in Sri Lanka, the importer, two different countries, two different jurisdictions, laws are different, and the language may be different, body language may be different, then the time zone may be different, culture may be different. So obviously there is a chance there can be misunderstanding when the goods are delivered. So at the end of the day, goods has to be delivered to conclude the international trade. So to avoid these issues, ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, came with the Incoterms, right? So we have seen 11 Incoterms, and out of that, 7 are for any mode and 4 especially for maritime. So, and we have discussed this, and there's a chart, and your chart maybe there are 3 things you have to look into. One is the obligation, where what I have to do as an exporter. Then the second one is who is going to bear the cost up to what point. And the third one is the risk, where the risk passes from the exporter to the importer. Right. And for that, the most important thing is, if we are coming to the maritime, so the most important thing is the bill of lading, because that shows the carriage of goods. So in the international trade, the first and the foremost is the formation of the contract of sale between the buyer and the seller, or the importer and the exporter. So that is the most important thing. So that is the backbone of international trade. So out of that contract only, other contracts start flows. So then the contract of carriage will come into full play. Then the contract of insurance, then the contract with the bank for financial settlement. So there are so many other contracts will follow. But the first and the foremost, there should be a contract of sales agreement between the buyer and the seller. As I told you, these are private agreement between the two individual parties. So there should not be any government intervention as to say the agreement should be like this or in this format and so on. So Normally, the big companies, they make the agreement in writing with the presence of the attorneys and so on, if the witnesses and to make sure that they are doing the correct thing without any ambiguity in it. But it does not mean all the contract of sale should be in that form. So it can be in your A4 size, just a pen on it, or it can be a fax message, or it can be an email message, or it can be your WhatsApp or whatever message. The format is, as long as the buyer and the seller agrees and they are clear on what they are trying to do, that's enough. So there is no, because at the end of the day, this is a private contract, right? Okay, so that is one. So the buyer and the seller tries to mitigate the issues that may come while it is being exported or from one country to another country. So as I told you, underline the word mitigation, because the problem is in the international trade anywhere, there is a risk involved, because the goods can be lost, goods can be damaged, or in a cyclone, the ship can be sunk, and so many other things. So what they are trying to do is try to mitigate the damages that might happen and mitigate the misunderstanding between these two people. Right. So then we were talking about the very, very important document, that is the bill of lading and the equivalent to the airway bill when it comes to the transport by air. So bill of lading is one of the important document as far as the movement of the goods are concerned, because it is being done by an independent party, a third party. He is not a buyer and he is not a seller. He is doing the job on behalf of the buyer or on behalf of the seller. So if you take two examples, if it is a FOB, free on board, the buyer has to enter into a contract with the shipping agent, that is called a contract of carriage, to bring the goods from one end to the another end. So if it is CIF, the contract of carriage is entered by the seller with the carrier to ship the goods. So depending on the terms of the contract of carriage, who is going to be a part of the contract of carriage differs, right? So I think we will be discussing this. And on top of that, I just want to make sure that if you go to Google and just go to the Incoterms in one shot, everything is explained. Like one is the cost factor, then the other one is the obligation factor, and the other one is the risk factor. There are three things that you have to be familiar with. Right. Now, as a customs officials, what is the big issue for us? Because as I told you, it is a private contract. So it can be a private contract, but only thing, as the customs officials try to implement the customs ordinance and revenue factors and the other factors like restricted goods and so on. So it is of interest to us to accomplish our duty on that, right? Rather than he is also having the same problem now. So one of the most important document is the bill of lading. So the bill of lading acts with so many functions. So it's first, it gives a receipt to the shipper saying that we have received, say, 2 containers to be transported from Chennai to Sri Lankan Colombo port. So it's a receipt of the cargo. Then it itself a contract of carriage, because you need not go and sign another piece of paper with the shipper, with the shipping lines as a contract of carriage, because the BL itself a contract of carriage, right? Then it's the most important thing. It's a quasi-judicial document. It's a half judicial document because it can be a very important thing. For example, it is an enabler of the international trade. Say if you take about 10 years ago, right, the BL was only a receipt of goods and carriage. So I am an importer in Sri Lanka and I order certain things from UK and my shipper has already shipped, and it's not going to help me. As an importer, I want to see my goods and then only I can go for a payment terms, right? So then there is a gap between the shipment date and the receiving date. So until such time, the international trade will not move. So if you go for another trade, then you have to wait until this is settled. So now, because of the revolutions and evaluation of the BL, the moment something is put on board and the BL is issued, that shows the importer in Sri Lanka is getting an assurance from a third party. Now your goods are safe in our hand and it will be delivered. So you need not wait until your goods are arrived in Colombo, right? So it is as good as that it has arrived in Colombo. Yes, please. Pardon me? Yeah. That's what he also having the same problem. Now, for us, it is more important for one instance, especially nowadays, after this COVID-19 situation and so on, we have a problem because most of the things are now 3 things are happening now. Like after this COVID-19, the government wanted to see the flying out of the foreign exchange out of Sri Lanka. So they want to arrest the flying out. So one way of arresting is import restrictions. So import can be restricted in 3 ways. What is your experience like? How the import can be restricted in 3 ways? Your experience, please. Yeah, you may get wrong, but only we'll talk. How do you put a restriction on the importer? Restrictions? Put it under? Yes, what do you? Temporary suspension. So these things, these are the HS code and these are items. And from today onwards, up to such and such day, it is put on temporary suspension. So that is one way of putting a restriction or break on the imports. Then you are trying something. You are put it on the license. Yeah, certain things are put on license. So until you go to the import and export control and get the license, you can't import. So that is the second break. Where's the third break? Where's the third break? I think yesterday, if you listen to central bank governor's press report, payment, exactly, payment terms. So now, if you can, practically you can see, go back to this thing and say, there are certain items which they say the payment terms. So they say certain HS code, 90 days, certain HS code, 180 days. So that means you can only send the goods only after 90 days or only in certain cases only after 180 days. So that is also putting a break. So what happens is most of the shippers abroad may not agree for that because they won't wait until 90 days and 180 days. So probably you may not get the import into the country because that might have an impediment in the shipment. So 3 ways you can practically, one is put under temporary license, temporary suspension, other one is put under license, the other one is put under payment term restrictions, right? 90 days or 180 days. So even if you open the LC, so your LC, you can't send the money as it is. You have to wait until 90 days or 180 days to remit to the exporter. So that is 3 ways of bringing the restriction, right? Now coming back to your problem and your problem. So now suddenly it says right from today onwards, these items are put on temporary suspension, and the condition is those items will not be accepted in Sri Lanka if they are 2 words. One is put on board after this date or shipped before this such and such date. So there are 2 words they can always say: put on board dates, and the other one is shipment dates. Right now, BL, that's what now. BL dates, right? BL issued dates, right? Just BL, right? So that is there. The practical problems are there. So now, normally what happens is on-board dates is maybe the BL date and the on-board date may be the same, right? Because there are 2 days. One is if you can say on board on such and such day. Sometimes the BL date may be 1 or 2 days after that, right? So sometimes they may ship on or before such and such day. So there are certain things which are very tricky one, right? I think you're also having the same problem, and the interpretation by the import and export control is different, right? So that was this. So at the end of the day, because this is what practically happening. Now at the end of the day, what happens is, normally if the goods are under license, right? Goods are under license. The moment the goods are coming into the limit of the port, so by operation of law, it is forfeited if you don't have the valid license by operation of the law, right? So the time of importation is very important. So when it is imported into Sri Lanka, whether the goods are coming into the territorial water time, or whether it is docked, or whether it's unloaded, or whether it is delivered, there are so many times can be there. So under the customs law, two types of importations are there. One is under section 16 of the customs ordinance. The time of importation for restricted and prohibited items are, right, the time in which the ship carrying the goods enter the port limits of Sri Lanka, right? Okay, right. Now, for the purpose of assessment, so that means you had to get your rate of duty and you had to get your rate of exchange. So there's a time for that. For the purpose of for the purpose of assessment, Act number 1 of 2006 finance. 1 second. Government Revenue Act number 1 of 2006. It says for the purpose of assessment of custom duties and assessment, no, it says the time of importation shall be the time on which the custom declaration is lodged to the customs, right? So that is the reason, say today you are getting a shipment, say you are also getting one shipment in one ship, same he is also getting a shipment, so you put the declaration today this evening, so your time of shipment is today evening, so the rate of duty and the rate of exchange prevailing will be applied. He is for some reason he is declaring to the customs after 1 week, but same ship, but probably his time of shipment will be, the rate of exchange, everything may be changed, right, depending on the rate of exchange. But for the purpose of what you call purpose of restricted and prohibited item, both are bringing the, you are also bringing the same good, he is also bringing the same good in same vessel, but when the vessel comes into the port limit, your importation is over. So even though you may not have put your declaration, but the moment the goods comes into the port limit, your importation is over. So if a person bringing, say for example, one hypothetical example, some say trucks, then the moment it comes into the territorial water, he has already imported. So if you catch them, they can't say, you can't catch me because I have not imported, because I have not put my declaration, right? So that declaration is only for the assessment purpose. For the prohibited and restriction, it is by law, the goods coming into the port limit, your importation is over. So if you are bringing a vehicle more than 3.5 years, so you need not go and lodge to the customs. The moment your vehicle comes within the port limit, your goods is already forfeited by operation of the law, because importation has been completed. So there are two things. One is section 16 of the customs ordinance. Other one is government protection of government revenue Act number 1 of 2006. 2006, yes. So two different things, right? Now we are going here and there. Okay, yes, please. Yeah, it's like this. Normally, That's a very good question. Right. What is the time you are expected to declare? So normally there are two things. One is, we will discuss this little now during today, but I will take the small example. Right. Now, to go and claim a goods that is it's you, then only you must first have your, as I told you, the international trade, first you must have your, what is the ownership. Then only you can claim your goods. So how do you get the ownership? Not from the BL, not from the DO. It is from your contract with your, what you call, with your exporter or importer, right? So the moment your ownership is there, right, because of your contract and so on, then by BL you are only having a title for the goods, right? So now what happens? Your BL, it is in your name. So you have the title. So you go to the bank and get your BL, copies and all. Then you go to the shipping agent and get the DO. So the DO, delivery order, is the delivery order. Shipping agent, as a person who represent the carrier, because he has obliged to deliver to you, because he has undertaken that I will deliver to you receipt and carry, and I will deliver to X. So now you go to the bank, get your document, go to the shipping agent. The shipping agent will give you the, what you call, a very important document, DO, delivery order. So that one delivery order they will give you to the customs. The other one is they give you to the port authority, because they are the custodian of the goods, right? So when you have the DO, you can always, that is the time you are entitled to lodge your declaration, because that is the document gives you the both title of the goods. Until such time you can't lodge, right? So the DO is very important, right? Okay, right. Then the issue here is, the second one is pre-declaration, pre-arrival declaration. So before the arrival, you declare to the customs, because by the time the goods comes, you just take the goods and go, especially the perishable item. Even now we are doing practically, like I don't know how many of you know, or like onions, potatoes, and so on. So what happens is, the DO is issued by the agent in advance, because probably they will probably from Pakistan or India. So it's a very short voyage. So they issue the before the arrival of the goods, they issue you the DO. So then the customs accept the DO and accept your declaration even prior to the arrival of the goods, arrival of the ship. Only so far, not legally binding, but on a practice, the custom is practicing this for the last so many years, only for the perishable item. So there are a lot of issues, especially two issues that we can just go to the course. One is the potatoes, other one is the potatoes, and the other one is the 100% what you call electric vehicle, right? So very interesting. So electric vehicle, the rate of duty was 50%, right? 50%. So then the importers came to know they are going to change this from 50 to 5% from today midnight, right? So sorry, from 5 to 50% midnight, right? So there are so many goods about to come. So what they did was they lodged the declaration to the customs with the help of some agent, because they all gave the DO. Because as I told you, the giving the DO is not our problem, because those are contract between the individual parties, right? So they put the declaration and they paid the 5% duty, right? Because they 5% duty, they know from midnight it's going to change for 50%. Right. Then when the delivery was effected, the customs stopped and says, no, you have to pay 50% because now the rate of duty is changed. So there's a big issue. Then they went to the courts, and their argument was, in your section, what you call, Government Revenue Protection Act number 1 of 2006. For the purpose of assessment, the date of importation shall be the date on which we submit the declaration to you. So we have submitted the declaration at 4 p.m. before midnight, and at that time rate of duty was 5%. That's all. Then you can't ask us to amend it or pay an extra 45% because as per your law, it's only 5%. You got the point, right? Okay. Then it went to the courts because it's a very big issue because that amount is so high. It went to court, then a lot of other arguments. Then the court held until the goods or the imported goods being imported into Sri Lanka, any declaration is only for the facilitation, right? You can put the declaration, it's only for facilitation. But legally, it is not valid if the goods are not being imported. So you cannot put a declaration for a not imported goods. So goods are not being imported into Sri Lanka. So if there's no importation taking place, you cannot put your declaration. So that declaration is not valid. So that is the case. So then the other issue came, reverse side, potatoes, right? So they are the change was other way around. So they wanted the, what you call, refund from the, because what they say is, when we put the declaration, it's 20 rupees per kilo. But when the goods came, about 1 or 2, because at that time, perishable, even today, perishable is allowed to be put the prayer declaration before arrival, pre-declaration process. So then the argument was, when we put the declaration to 20 rupees per kilo, now when the goods came, now it is 5 rupees per kilo, please refund us 15 rupees. Because we can't argue both ways, no. Either you can say yes or no, but they are also the same principle applied, whether upward adjustment or downward adjustment, your declaration is not valid, then we have to give the 5 rupees because that is also still going on. Now, under the free trade agreement, so under FTA, what they call trade facilitation agreement. So one of the requests is you must have a pre-arrival declaration facilities. So when you have pre-arrival declaration facilities, then customs has to decide whether when the after declaration goods are going up and down before it is being cleared, you have to take the decision. So if it is benefited to customs, you have to take it. If it is benefited to the importer, you have to give it. Because you can't have both ways, no. You can't say now when the customs is benefited, no, we are doing this. When the importer is benefited, we can't say. So this is one of the prerequisites of the free trade facility agreement of the WTO. One of the, out of the 36 measures, this is pre-arrival is very important because to facilitate the trade. So what happens is, if you can put the declaration with your DO before the goods arrive, legally we have to make some changes in the legal document. So then the importer is able to take the delivery as the goods arrived into, because you have 3 days time, so you can do all your assessment, then have what you call HS code valuation also. Then he is ready with the goods when he's ready to take over the goods or to take the delivery when the goods arrives into Sri Lanka. Okay, so these are all these things. So I am taking you some time out of this. So if you look at into cases, some Vasana trading versus Sri Lanka customs on the what you call electric vehicle, then there are some other issues, potato case that is on the, so both are, if you are interested, just go to your legal branch and take it and just read it. Just you have some sort of a some interesting point, right? So right now the other one is on the normally the BLs are, there are 5 types of BL. Why I am telling is this is very important for us. There are 5 types. One is the straight BL. So that is straight to the consign. So if you are ABC and company, you are the importer, it goes straight to you. You cannot change it, non-negotiable. Then the other one is the order BL. So that is where, you know, that with high seas sales, so if you're doing the intra trade, so goods can come from China, it has to come to Sri Lanka, and after Sri Lanka, we may do some small changes like repacking or labeling, and then we send it to third country, right? That's an intra trade, no? So likewise, when the goods are moving from China, the person in Sri Lanka, without bringing the goods into Sri Lanka, he can switch the BL. So if it is a straight BL, he can't switch. So if it is order BL, if it is in my name, I can ask the agent, please switch the BL to for say ABC company Colombo, please switch the BL to XYZ Colombo, Malaysia. Right? So now what happens is the switching of BL happens in the mid-sea. Then the status, when it comes to Sri Lanka, it goes as a transshipment cargo. It is not coming under other these things, right? So the status changes. So it is not coming to the customs area. From there, it goes to Malaysia without contact. So that is. So in a ship, how many types of goods come? When a ship's coming, say for example, one ship comes to Sri Lanka, how many types of ships are there? Goods are there? How many types of goods? Yeah, one shipment, very good. Other one? What's it? No, I can't. Home use, yes, very good. Other one? Other one what? Is there any more? Right, basically there are three. Yeah, very good. One is the inbound cargo, that is to Colombo. Then you pay your duty. So it can be for home consumption. It can be for your warehousing, for on-proper trade, or like, you know, TEEP scheme, or for BOI and so on. So those are inbound, coming into customs area. So inbound. The second one is the, as you said, transshipment, right? So what happened? The goods come in ocean green line. They bring it and stuff it in the port and leave it and go. Then some other vessel comes and take it to the port like India or something like that. So if you really look at the Sri Lankan Port Authority, their income, 75% of their incomes come from the transshipment, right? So what happens is the vessel comes, then it drops and vessel goes, and another vessel comes and picks it and goes to the final destination. So the third one is in transit. So the vessel comes. It is not for Colombo. It is not for transshipment. It sits in the vessel, and then the vessel takes that goods to the second one. Say for example, from China, first call port of Colombo, second call goes to other port. So it goes and takes it either transshipment there or inbound cargo there. So it doesn't get unloaded. So it sits in the vessel. So that's called in transit. So they are supposed to declare both inbound cargo, transshipment cargo, and in transit cargo, the customs. So that is their manifest say these are these things, right? So the BL is very important. I am sorry, I am not in a position to give you a correct answer because of the issues by import and export control. So at the end of the day, the law very clearly says the import controller has the power override all these things, and when she says something, that is the law as far as the Import and Export Control Act is concerned. So I don't know whether they have the knowledge to tell, but at the end of the day, that is the position we have to take, right? So then the third one is the order BL. So order BL means so negotiable, and then I can as an importer I can ask the shipping line to negotiate and give it to another importer. So that can be done. So other one is the, pardon me? A bearer, sorry, I'm sorry, that's a bearer BL. Huh? So whoever has the BL, the shipping line has to give the delivery to him. So bearer, I'm sorry, that's bearer. Order is the second one. The third one is the clean BL. That means the BL says the goods are received in good condition, good packing, and everything is clean. Quantity, everything. The last one is the closed BL. They have put some close to say goods are not in order, packing is not, there's a leakage and so on. So then they talk to the shipper and ask what we can do. If the shipper is not responding, they will say, put up a spoke and say this is a closed BL. So the importer in Sri Lanka can take up with the shipper saying that you are not obliged with the correct packing and those things like. So basically there are straight, order, then bearer, then clean, and the closed BL. Right. Then there are some cases where I think we discussed this case last week. That is actually a genuine case. Now we are talking about the fraud. So mostly after this COVID-19 situation, I think before the freight has gone shot up, and earlier 20-foot container from China to, yeah, please. Yeah, surrender BL is less. Now it's like this, no? Now, the very good question, but that is not that type of, that is a different type, but anyway, there's a, so now you are going, as an importer, you are going to the bank, and the bank pledged you the loan, give you the loan, right? So now what the bank says, so the bank needs the collateral. So they must have some sort of a, what do you call, some, what do you call, collateral means what? So because they must have some sort of, yeah, this thing. So what they do is, so they gave you the, normally what happens when you go to the bank, because you have a rapport with the bank, sometimes you will have a nil margin LC. So you won't put anything, right? And the bank will, because they have a rapport with you, they will open the LC without taking any cent from you, right? They will only get this money when the goods arrive in Sri Lanka. So that is nil margin. So most of the thing, they will say 100% you have to deposit somewhere. So if the LC value is say $10,000, you have to deposit with them at $10,000. So they are not worried. So even if you are defaulted, then they have the mechanism to recover. Then there are, third one is, what is the surrender bill? That's a pledged loan. So the bank will give you a loan, but they will have the custody of the goods, right? So that is, even though you are the importer, the BL says on account of banker's loan, this. So they can only give to the banker's loan. So that's the pledge. So bank will have some sort of a control over your this thing. Then when you go and deposit, or we have some agreement with the bank only, the bank will give you, endorse and give you the clear that on your bill. So that is, you have to surrender the bill to the bank. So that is called the pledge BL or surrender BL. So when the banks gives you the money to open the LC, so they have some grip over your, so the BL will be in their name. Then they will clear depending on how you settle the bill with them, right? So, but in the normal things, like for example, even today, the bank cannot open an LC, but nowadays motor vehicles are not allowed. But earlier, to control the imports of motor vehicle, if you want to open the LC, you had to give you 100% what you call fund, you had to deposit with the bank. So the bank cannot give you a nil margin LC. So you have to, so every time you imported this thing, you have to keep 100% of the, so to discourage the importation. So every time you have to give the money, right? So that's the law. If you go to the import and export control, is the law very clearly says you can't have a nil margin. So you have to, so especially for vehicle, motor vehicle, you have to keep the 100% with the bank. And then only you can open the LC, right? So these are all conditional these things. So now where we stop? Right. Now, right. So that's what now in his these things. So on board or shipped on board or BL dates, then I don't think my personal this thing, import and export control do not have an idea of what is these terms are. Yeah, that's what I'm telling. They should have actually consulted the customs, because those are the wording, very wording we had, because the problem is now they can interpret, they can give one wording, but whereas the trade is one, customs is one, so they must have some sort of a understanding of the practical scenario. That is the reason most of the things are getting complicated, the simple things, because of the wordings and so on, right? Because it can be shipped on board, the BL date, on board, not later than this date and so on. So there can be a lot of other things like. So that's why I'm not in a position to tell you exactly what is the issue, what is the solution. But technically speaking, for me, on-board date and the BL dates are nowadays, because of the electronic transmission, are same. But it can be a varied date also, right? Because nowadays, as you know, because these are like yesterday or last time, because these are window berthing. So when you have a window berthing, within 3 hours, everything is loaded. So your BL date and the dates, right? But suppose if it is not window dating, the vessel waiting for 3 days in Colombo to get 100 containers. So 25 containers will go today, on board dates today. The next 25 containers will go tomorrow, on board dates tomorrow. The next container goes to next 20 days. Then BL will be another date, right? So these are all practical problems, right? Okay, right. Right. Now we'll come to the next payment. So these we are supposed to discuss this last time, but because we were running here and there, we couldn't really manage the time. Right. Payment terms. Right. So now this is the Gazette notification in 2012, and the Gazette notification very clearly says, if you really want a copy of this, I have a copy I can share with somebody, then make sure that you take the photo, give it and give me back. So this is the Gazette notification issued by the Import and Export Controller. That is somewhere in January 2nd, 2012, right? So there it always talks about so many terms which you are expected to do. So basically there are 4 terms, because there are self-explanations. There are 4 terms. One is the letter of credit. Other one is the collection. So collection has 2. One is the DA, deferred documents against acceptance, and the documents against payment. And the other one is the advance payment. And the other one is the, what you call, open account, and the consignment. Right. Now, did anybody, so what is the LC? What is the difference between why people are more secured when the LC is there? Especially when the value is so high and you are dealing with the exporter for the first time, you don't know the exporter. So LC is the best way of doing things, simply because the bank is giving you the guarantee for your payment. So they are in between, a person is giving you a guarantee. So that is the bank. So the LC. But of course, there are a lot of issues for that, because the bank charges, commissions, 2%, 3%, and those things are and there are some very strict rules and conditions and so on. So LC is the most secured for both, but it has some cost involved. Right. Then the next one is the documents against payment. So now I have entered into a contract with you, and after that you send the goods, and you send the document to the bank, right? So when I go to the corresponding bank in Sri Lanka, then when I try to take the document from this thing, so that's the DL is the most important document, and all the other document like invoice, then packing list, and all the other supporting documents. So what happens is, if it is a documents against payment, so I pay the bank the money and take the documents. So the bank gives the documents. So the difference between the LC and documents against payments is time lapse. Because LC means the day you open the LC, you have to pay the bank. Then after that only the production will be happening, shipment will take place. Here the advantage, shipment has already come. Right? Shipment has already come. Then you go to the bank to take the document, you pay the amount and take it. Okay? Then documents against acceptance. You go to the bank, shipment has come. Then there is a, say you have agreed with the shipper, 3 months, 9 months, 12 months. Then you agree and say, yes, I will pay you in 3 months, depending on the agreement. And that time you don't pay. So you pay only after 3 months or 9 months, depending on that. As I told you very clearly, these are all individual agreement. If I say on a DA terms, yes, you pay me after 3 months, nobody can question me. Right? So if the DP terms, it is an agreement between you and me. Then the bank will not give you the document until you pay the document bank to the CIF value, whatever the value there. So you got the point, three areas. Right. Then advance payment means you pay in advance. Right? Say for example, if you have ordered a machinery for your own specific machinery, the shipper will be saying, well, please give me 40% advance because I have to make your machinery for you. So I have to buy the material and so on. Then he'll agree, say 40% advance payment, then 30% after completion of the machinery, and after 30% after shipment of the machinery. So that we agree. That as long as an importer and exporter can agree to terms and we are comfortable in this thing, then nobody can stop you, right? So the advance payment. Right. The last one is the open account. What is open account? So you now as an exporter in Sri Lanka, without any banking, you send your goods and the documents to the shipper directly. Right? Then after 90 days or 60 days, then the shipper will be sending the money through the bank. Right? So here, very risky one, because you are sending the goods without any payment involved or any assurance to the payment, right? Because there is no bank involved. Only the bank will be involved only when the money is sent through, right? So, right. Now, yesterday, how many people have listened to the current, we call central bank governor? He says because of the Hawala or Undial, you know what is Undial? What is Hawala? What is that? What is Undial and what is Hawala? Both are same. Yeah, that is unofficial transaction of foreign currencies. Say for example, if you are, say for example, if you want to under invoice your value, so if the value is $100, you send it, say $60 by official channel through the bank, and the balance 40 you send it to a personal somebody doing the Hawala, this thing. So that's a very strong, not only in Sri Lanka, that's a very powerful. You can't stop with that because they go to the extent of financing for arms dealing, then drugs and those things like. So it's a very big business. So what he says is, from today onwards, probably he may amend this gazette notification to do away with this for importation, not for export, importation, to do away with this open account business, right? So practically, yes, if he practically says, what he says is because the money is being sent, what you call, not through the proper channel, but through the improper channel. right? So that he wants to see the money has to go through the channel. So he wants to stop the open account because that is the reason there is a survival of the unauthorized hawala or undial and so on. Right. So now technically speaking, if it is I am talking about the imports into Sri Lanka. So if it is on open account, genuinely what happens is they send the goods. So you pay after 3 months or 6 months through a bank, right? So that is normally, that is the pattern. But nowadays, what is practically is correct in one sense, because even the big companies, importers, because their problem is getting their, even if they give the local currency, it is very difficult for them to convert this into dollar and send it to the shipper. So shipper is not going to give you because there are a lot of issues in converting the currency. So he has to wait for months and months. So that is happening now. Right. So to avoid that, what happens is even the big companies, what they do is they simply say open account, right? Then shipper will not give you 90 days, 30 days, especially when thinking about Sri Lanka situation. So what they do is they pay 100% through a hawala account. But paper says open account 90 days or 180 days. So goods comes here, right? Then you clear on open account 90 days, 180 days. So nobody follows this. But the shipper is not worried because he has already got his money. Right? Because simply because of the current situation in Sri Lanka, even the big companies are doing that. Because one, when you go through the bank, LCs and all, cost is so high. And the most important thing is they can't pay the shipper on time. Right? Even if you pay your money locally to the bank is not able to convert into the foreign currency to send it to the shipper. So shipper is saying, no, I'm not going to send you the next consignment because I'm not worried whether the country is this side, that side. I need the money. So one way of doing thing is open account kila dala. Then your paper says open account, shipment is coming, you are cleared, and it says 180 days or 90 days. So nobody follows after 180 days, about 6 months now. Nobody follows. So what the shipper is also not worried because his payment has been sent through an unofficial channel. This is actually the central bank. Central bank has to monitor. And even the customs, I don't know about it now. Earlier, when is the shipment on what you call on open account, so there is a code, and ICT enter that codes. When we were there, every 90 days, 100 days, we just run and see whether it has been settled or not. But now I don't think anybody follows this because after the relaxation of the import control, export control, and so on. So now what he's saying that I think probably tomorrow you'll get a notice to say no more open account as far as the import is concerned, because he wants to make sure that the payment is made through the official channel, not through the any unofficial channels. So that is one. But very importantly, he has not touched the open account for export purpose. Otherwise, whole country will collapse. Why? Most of the shipments are going from Sri Lanka, especially for Ukraine and China, what you call Russia. Most of the things are on open account, especially the tea exports. So what happens? So as an exporter, you are taking a very big risk. But depending on the market, whether it's a buyer's market or seller's market, depending on the type of goods. If you say that when you send the money, otherwise I will send my goods, then you will not be. But depending on the goods, you have to go and take the calculated risk. So what happens is most of the exports are even now going under open account, but otherwise you can't have a business. Right? So you, when the USSR broke into CISR in the early part of 1980s, and Sri Lanka lost so many billions of rupees because most of the tea were exported on the open account. And after the breakdown of the 26 what you call CIS countries, Commonwealth countries, their banking system went on. Most of the exporters are not able to trace, and money has not come because we are taking a risk. So only one way of mitigating the risk is that is where the Export Development Board has a export credit insurance. So you have to, but that of course expensive because there's a premium involved, right? So that is one way of mitigation of risk of not getting the non-payment. One way of this thing is go for a insurance, because you can't change this thing, because some type of goods you can't sell until you agree for open account, because nobody will buy from you, because those are the type of market and type of these things like right now.
People import and become market. Depending on the price break of India, they give a commission and balance is sent back to India.
That is consignment basis. That is consignment basis. That is consignment basis. That is consignment. What he says is another one. That is consignment basis. That means you give a consignment. Now he is an exporter from India. I'm an importer in Sri Lanka. He sent me a consignment basis 120-foot container of such and such. So what I do is, I will not send the money. Only thing I will send the money after selling the goods and take my commission and send to him. So he is taking a very big risk, because if I don't sell, I won't give the money, and especially perishable. So it's a very risky area, but those are consignment basis. And the consignment basis is the title is not changed. Even though he has sent me the goods, I think we have discussed this title and the possession. I have the possession, but it is not I don't have the title, right? So then he is taking a risk. So some certain things, especially say if the Indian guys think that it's a matter of, perishable, and when the apple is very much low, just take a chance, right? So that type of thing, but only the very high, these things, they won't take a chance. So that is the consignment basis. So as I told you, there are two things. One is the title and the other one is the possession. But we gave an example. I buy a book and I have the title. When I give you for reading for 2 or 3 days, you don't have the title, but you have the possession, because that's with you have the possession, right? So that is very important, right? Now, so this is very important. Just to follow this, what is happening. Especially you may get a notice from tomorrow, like very hot news about this open account. I don't know how it's going to serve, but only as far as the import is concerned, not for the exports, right? Okay. So there's a gazette notification. So it gives all the information about these things. So it's very self-explanatory. So we need not spend much. So basically, you must understand. So the most secured, as an exporter, the most secured this thing is, what is the most secured for you? As an exporter, what is the best thing you will insist on? Advance payment. Very good. Advance payment is the most secured one, right? So the least secured one is the consignment basis or what you call open account. So turn the other way around. As an importer, it turns the other way around. So as an importer, the most secured one is the what? Open account, or most secured for it, because most happy because I get the stuff without any payment. So if you have a ladder, so the starting with the most secured like this, then for the importer it goes like this, opposite, works opposite. But at the end of the day, the market decides what is the payment terms, right? So all this time we were talking about individual agreement on the payment terms, whether it's open account or these things. But after the COVID-19, that is the first time the law prescribed certain things. Yes, you can't pay immediately, no advance payment. It has to be 30 days, 100 days. That is where we are talking about 3 ways of controlling imports. One is putting under the temporary suspension. The other one is putting under the license. Third one is putting the restrictions about the payment term days. So all this time I and you agree 30 days, 90 days. Now the government says, and certain HS code, yes, this has to be 80 days, it has to be 90 days. So the law has come into the play. So all this time it is an individual agreement. We agree with both of us, but now the government also getting involved because of the, to make sure that imports are restricted so that they can always have a arrest of the foreign currency going out, thereby what do you call this, fluctuations of the depreciations of local currencies, kept as a manageable form. Right? Yeah. Okay. Or no other payment, like no other payment, BADP terms and so on. Pardon me? Oh, that's how it comes, right? Right. Now, in the LC, there are 10. This I will try to explain. Just if you are not satisfied with the answer, please call them. Right. Now, when you open the LCs, right. Right. So when you open the LC, now there are two things. One is you are an importer in Sri Lanka, right? Then you have an exporter, say in India and Sri Lanka. Right. Before you open, there are 10 activities. So what is the very first activity for an international trade to happen? What is the very first activity? First activity. Otherwise, you can't go ahead with that. What is the very one? Contract of sales agreement between the exporter and importer. So first is the contract of sales. Right. So this is the first one. Contract of sales. Right. So after the contract of sales, the importer has to act. So he has to apply for application for LC in a local bank. So that is called the issuing bank. Right. So act number 2. Right. Now this issuing bank will notify this bank, export bank, that is called the beneficiary bank, or yeah, that's called the issuing bank or instructing bank. Oh, right. So number 3, when the LC application comes to the bank, this bank informs this bank, yes, we have gotten application. So now this LC application is sent to that. LC is sent. Number 3. Then this bank will inform the exporter saying that advice of the LC. Number 4. Now the first channel is over. Right? After the LC is advised, then the exporters knows now the bank has given us the guarantee. Right? Bank has given me the guarantee. Then what happens? The next one is, according to the LC condition, this is the shipment. Number 5. Right? So when he ships, then he transfer the documents to his bank. The documents are sent. So what are the documents? When he ship, BL, then that is the carriage of contract, then the invoice, packing list, any test report, all the documents according to the condition of the LC sent. Right. So that is act number 6. Right. 7, immediately he pays. Payment released. 7A. And immediately he sent the documents here. 7B. Right? Then document controlled by this bank and everything is okay because these are working on not seeing the goods, purely on the document. Then this bank reimburse the money. Reimburse the money, number 8. Right? Number 9, after that, the bank release the document to the importer. Number 9. Number 10, he goes to the bank and take the document and goes to the shipping line and gets the DO to take delivery or possession of the goods. So these are the activities. So this is number 10. Right. Now the issue is coming back to your problem. Now what happens? So LC is open. Now the problem here is number 8 is not happening. Number 8 is not happening because the dollar is not going to the beneficiary bank because of our problem. Right? The importer has already given in rupees, but our banks are unable to convert in this thing. Right? So LC condition is not fulfilled. Right? Because the money has been not released. So that means our local bank cannot release the document. So the number 9 cannot happen. So if number 9 is not happening, number 10 will not happen. So this is where you all say so many containers are waiting, 2,000, 3,000 containers, unable to unload because number 8 is not happening. So the bank, local bank, whether it is People's Bank or any bank in Sri Lanka, cannot release the goods, cannot release the documents for the importer because the conditions, whether it is the problem with the importer or problem with the bank, the condition is not fulfilled. So that is the crux of the LC, because LC means that some banks are in between. So if that is not happening, they can't release the documents. So if they can't release the documents, you can go and take the possession of the goods. So this is the you are telling, the president was telling to release it because they can't. That is what LC is all about. Otherwise, it's a break of international conventions. So our people can say, why you can, please release it, we will settle tomorrow, day after. No. Seems simple as that. So that is where you see so many things, so many thousand containers, 2,000, 3,000 containers, they say you can't unload because it's stuck because of this. Then the central bank release certain dollars to bank. So bank gets some priority and try to release the goods. Then while they are try to release the dollars, when they are releasing the dollars, then they release the document as well. So this is the most important problem. So that's what now people say, right? Tomorrow they are unloading, the day after tomorrow unloading. No, it's not that. So because the LC conditions are very, that is the reason why people goes to the bank and open the LC because of the millions dollars worth of, one shipment of gas is about so many billions worth of rupees. So they can't just take this. Right. Then there's a case between the Stone Fertilizer Corporation versus the Guangdong CD, what do you call, organic fertilizer ship from China. So what is the case? This is also something to do with the LC condition. What is the case? Have you got any idea what is the case? You know the case, no? The vessel was around Sri Lanka about a month because of the quality and those things. But you got the. So what is the case there really? Because these are practical ones. That's what I wanted to discuss. Because otherwise, if you go to the Google, you can set all the LCs. But these are the practical ones you must really understand. So what is the issue there? Fertilizer ship. What do you think? What is the issue? Pardon me? Yes, court ordered the bank not to release it. Yes. Is it the correct thing? The court, can the court intervene in this? Can the court intervene in this? So, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer. In my opinion, the court should not have intervened in this because these are a private contract, right? Okay. What really happened? Because the LC was LCO, the Sloan Fertilizer Corporation, and the second one is some fertilizer company. They opened the LC in favor of the Chinese shipment of seaweed organic fertilizer. So about so many billion worth of fertilizer. So what the Chinese company says is the LC condition is the most important thing. No, the LC condition only the bank has to see. LC conditions as what you call adhere to if there's any violation. Then the LC condition is, according to the Chinese, I have not seen the LC, but according to the Chinese, what they say is the third party appointed by the Sri Lanka Standard Institute has to do a test before sailing. That is from China. And they say they are going to the SDS, that is being appointed by the Sri Lanka Standard Institute, and they have tested and they said they are cleared the shipment. Then we came with the shipment. So while they are coming, another sample was sent to NPQS, National Plant Quarantine Services in Sri Lanka. So when they tested, they say no, there's a contaminated pathogen and Irvino, some what do you call, some pathogen or what do you call this, some sort of a, there's a presence of, and it is beyond the certain allowable percentage, so it cannot be allowed to be imported because it will kill the whole agriculture product of Sri Lanka. So they struck on this and they say no, it cannot be allowed. Right. Now the issue is now only everybody wanted to see what is the conditions, because that I'm sure because of the Chinese influence they would have just opened the LC without much of a taking into consideration about the LC conditions and so on. Right. Now their claim is only the condition is before sale you have to get the third party tests appointed by the Sri Lanka Standard Institute. Yes, we are done and it is clear. Now our LC condition is fulfilled, and there is no condition for the test by the NPQS. There's no condition, right? So why you are bringing this into that? Right. So if you would have done this, their argument is this NPQS would have been tested before what you call getting into the agreement by looking the sample before the agreement is closed. You would have done this. Now you can't bring it all together. So that is the argument. Then give us the money. Even if you don't want to unload, give us the money. 7.6 million. Right. So the importer in Sri Lanka, their argument is we have contracted on 17th of September and they are shipped on the 20th of September within 3 days, and we didn't have the time to see the sample and so on, right? And our impression was after opening the LC only they will manufacture the product and the shipment will be about at least 3 or 4 months, whereas within 3 days they have sailed or shipped. So then they said we didn't have the time and those things, and that is a violation of the LC. So we are not supposed to pay. Then they went to the courts, and courts also gave an interim order not to release the money, which is about $7.6 million. Right. So the court says not to release the money. So in the meantime, there are a lot of other issues. Then the People's Bank was blacklisted because they are not obliged to the condition of the listing. So they were blacklisted. Then after that, there are a lot of other issues and so on. Then the courts has taken the Attorney General as they got involved and they wanted to amicably settle. Then the courts have released the order, vacated the order, and now it is back to the parties concerned. Then they agreed we will pay the amount. So it's about after 3 or 6, after 1 month, they pay the amount simply because, but they are not unloaded simply because their argument, loading, unloading is not a problem. According to LC, we have brought it. So if you are not unloading, give us the money. That's all. So that's here. So we, without any single unloading into the territory of Sri Lanka, we paid nothing but for $7.6 million. So that is one story. So that is, I'm just taking the example because the conditions of the LC is so vital, right? So that is very vital, the condition of the LC. Then we started with the very first slide, contract. So this is the contract between the exporter and the importer. So in the contract, there is a party, then there is something, what you call, the intention of the party to supply this, to supply, then obligation of the party. Then if one party breaks, right, or breach, then other party becomes the injured party. So here they say that Sri Lankan party has breached the contract. So now the Chinese party has become the injured party. Then what is the injured party? Then there is a remedy. So where do you get the remedy? So according to the agreement, the remedy is, they said that it has to be arbitrated in place in Singapore. So after paying 7.6 million, now they are taken us to Singapore arbitration according to the agreement. So if you go to the very first, can you just go to the very first slide, the contract? So injured party, remedy. So then choice of law, can you see the choice of law? In between choice of law. So the choice of law is according to the contract, not in Sri Lankan law, not Chinese law. It has to be by an arbitration by in Singapore. That's the choice of law according to the contract. But I have never seen the contract, but that's that. So now the issue is we paid 7.2 million, violating the LC condition, and then we are again taken up for arbitration in Singapore. So arbitration, don't know whether what will be there. I don't know. Sometimes they might settle between this. Right. So it's a big. What I'm trying to say is the conditions, the letters, LC, BL, those are very important documents. So your question is answered. Right. And even you won't believe, and when the ship was turned down and the Chinese company was insisting to issue a statement saying that because of import control issues, because the problem is NBQS test is important to get the import control clearance, right? So the Chinese problem is the clearing from the import control is your problem, importer's problem, it's not our problem, right? So if you are not in a position to clear from the your import control, issue us a certificate saying that because this was not unloaded, because there's an import control issue, not a quality issue. So they were very particular because when something is turned down, because that is reputation, because the quality issue is not the issue, quality is fine, that is tested, but because of the import control issue, only it is being turned down. So that type of this thing. So it's very important to have a very what you call contractual agreement and so on. Right? Okay. Right. Is there any that we can stop with? Then today's we can move to the today's original topic. All this time we were talking about this last time. So if you want, now it's what's the time now? For 3:30. What time you are supposed to be? 4:45. Right. So now can we stop for 10 minutes? Now 3:45, 4:45. Looking at your own way, own clock, 10 minutes. Right? If you look at somebody else's clock, then 10 means so many other times. So 10 minutes, we'll just relax it and we'll start doing our next session. So we'll have 1 hour. So if you want to have a break, you can have a break, but of course, 10 minutes enough or just then if you are having this 10 minutes, by 4:45 we can stop. But if you want more time, then the time will go up to 5. Because I have to finish my job. For 10 minutes, okay, done. So contractual arrangement, no breach. Sister, ඊළඟ මේක දාන්න පුළුවන්. Yes, ඒක තමයි. Yes. I have an extra copy. ஞானம் என்ன சொல்லுது? என்ன சொல்லுது? ப்ராக்டிக்கலா தான் கதை கொண்டு சும்மா அதுல இல்ல சைனீஸ் எல்லாம் உண்மையா என்னன்னு தெரியும். கேட்கறாங்க. ஓ இல்ல அவர் நோட் பண்ணிக்கோங்க. Zoom கட்டி மனோரி இதான் இது இதுக்கெல்லாம் போகணும். அங்க டிவில இதுக்கெல்லாம் சவுண்ட் இது இருந்தா சரி. ஆனா உண்டு ಅದನ್ನ ಬಿಡುವಂದ್ರೆ ಗಿನ್ನ ಗಂಡ ಬಿಡುವಂದ್ರೆ ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಿರಿಕಾಟ ವಿತ್ ಸೀನಿ ನೆಟ್ಟುವ ಕಿರಿ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಪ್ಲೇನ್ದಿ ಮೀಗ ದಾಂಡೆ ಪಾಕಿದ್ದೆ ಸೀನಿ ದಾಂಡೆ ಪಾ දැන් කිරි කතා කරන්නත් බෑනේ. milk නමුත් අර සීනි දාන්න එපා. For 10 minutes or 45 per now. Yeah, another 5 minutes. අර ඊයේ අපේ අර demonstration තිබුණානේ අපේ අර ඊයේ අර අපේ ඔෆිස් ඉස්සරහා අපේ ඊයේ අර ඕ ඒක කවුද ඔෆිසර් ග්‍රේඩ් නැත්නම් හැමෝම අර කියන එකවත හැම යුනියන් ඕකේ that's right. Right. Now, now the topic what we are going to discuss is regional economic integration. Actually, this is not prepared by me. It is Dr. Trevor Mendes has prepared. So he wanted me to deliver this based on his preparation. So entirely, I'm not responsible for these things. But anyway, we will be taking this as a right. Now, international trade, there are certain things, right? So the first one, the trade and the investments, what we talk about, like generally, right? So if you are talking about the trade and investments, there are basically 6 things should happen to see this economic growth of a particular country. The first one is the foreign direct investment or investment. So somebody has to come and invest. It can be a foreign direct investment or a local investment. Right. By doing that, what they are trying to achieve, by especially when the foreign direct investment comes into Sri Lanka, so what they are trying to achieve, especially for a host country like Sri Lanka, what we can gain from that. One is the foreign exchange coming into the country. Then technology is coming into the country, technology skills and so on, right? Then employment generation, right? Then the other one is the economic growth by exporting and so on. Like for example, if you take a company in BOI, it is same thing, right? So by doing that, so you will have a better setting a standard for certain things. So even the local industry also has to fall in line with that. For example, when Coca-Cola came into Sri Lanka, we will discuss this. Then the other local competitors like Elephant House and so on, can you see, they also change their tactics and the bottle sizes, you know, the neatness and the packing and everything, because really only if you see Elephant House, only a glass bottle, like some label and so on. So it sets a standard. So they are creating a competitiveness, right? So number one. Number two, right? So number two, what is the number two? What is number two? Then we call what is called as inward trade flows. Inward trade flow. What is inward trade flows? That's your imports. So why? So you keep up your living standards, because everything cannot be produced in one country. So you keep up your living standards. And what else? By doing imports, you are keeping the living standards of the people, then well-being of the people and development. And not only that, sometimes you need some imported items to manufacture your export-oriented goods. So that is where you get this, like for example, polyethylene, then all these things are imported for manufacture of the imported. So the second one is, the first one is the investment. It can be foreign or direct, foreign or local. Then the second one is you need the imports, because you need well-being of the people, right? Well-being, say for example, every country cannot produce everything, so you have to get some from. So well-being, standard livings of the people, like you can go for better handphone, those things like a better vehicle and so on. And not only that, development plus exports, right? To fund this, what do you need? You fund this, what do you need? That is where we are finding typical. You have to send the foreign exchange to meet the import bill. That is that we are having a problem now. Like to do that, what do you want? Then you need the outward activities. So what is the outward trade? What is your outward trade? Your exports, right? So now your first start with the people's need. To satisfy the people needs, you need the outward remittance. To get the outward remittance, you need the equal outflow of trade. So that is your exports or your tourism and so on. Like, so you need the rent. So number 3. So between these two, what we call the balance of payment of a particular country. That is called the balance of payment. So always balance of payment is you must have sufficient exports to finance your imports. So that's what every time the news they say we have only 2 months or 6 weeks of money for the imports. So that is not enough. At least you must have standard 3 months money for your imports. That's what they were warning. We are having a crisis because we are only having 6 weeks of foreign exchange to meet our imports. Right? So that's what the balance of payment means. How much you spend on your imports and how much you earn by your exports. So your export is higher, or at least you must have some sort of balance, right? So this is the balance of payment, right? So that is number 2, right? Number 3, start with investment, right? Then what else? Then we are talking about today's word is economic integrations. So the countries cannot work independently. So after the globalization, most of the order of the day is the integration. So integration can be in different forms, like free trade agreements, like bilateral agreement, or what you call facilitation is shifted from some other countries. Like for example, most of the garment factories are shifted from the Western country to this part of the country, right? So what we call the global value chain, right? So if you take one of your handphone, can anybody tell where it is being manufactured? Probably they are manufactured involving about at least 15, 16 countries. Design is somewhere, then the pads coming from somewhere, software comes from somewhere. So this is, so nobody knows where it is produced. So it's a global value chain, right? So in one way, this is the order of the day. So that is the reason why most of the garment factories are shifted to this part of the world, because of the efficient and cost labor and so on. So that is economic integration is very much important, right? Then the next one is competitiveness. So to attract this investment and the economic this thing, you must have a competitiveness, because you have to edge other countries, because everybody is fighting for the investment. So you must have a competitiveness. Then you must be able to produce things, then your customs clearance, then your laws, regulations, doing business, and so on. So you must be able to compete with other countries about in laws or labor laws or efficiency, then this number of holidays and the efficiency and so on. So the competitiveness is very important, because we are fighting for limited resources. To attract them to our country, we must have a better competitiveness, right? All these things, the last one point is the what we call the it has to be trickled down to the last people. So inclusive, the growth should be inclusive. So you can't exclude certain people, and only very top people will earn all these things and go. So that is not going to help. So the last one is we have to make sure that all these things are inclusive growth. So everybody try to come up in the same way. So that is where the success of the economic growth is all about, right? So this is the basic, when you talk about basic economic activities, and especially investment and international trade and investment and international trade, these 6 points are very important. One is the investments, then another one is the flow out of, so inside flow, that is the imports, then the outside flow, because you have to finance the imports, then you need the exchange. Then you go about the integration, like value global chain and so on, production facilities moving from one country to another country. So to attract them, you must have a competition in your this thing, labor competition and so on. Then the last one is inclusive economic growth. So bring everybody and try. So that is the reason most of the countries, sometimes the first 5 will write, but when the last one is not there, then again there will be again the problem of an unrest and so on. That is there. Okay, right. So this is the normal investment flow. Right. Now we are going to talk about the regional economic integrations. Right. So now when you talk about the regional economic integration, that is to bring certain things under one trade block. Like one good example is EU. So about 28 countries has come under one block so that they have a more power than having one individual country like France separately, then another country, Belgium separately, they have the power. So how we are bringing the integration together, right? So the level of integration is different, right? So the most important thing is how we are prepared to forgo our sovereignty, right? So we as a Sri Lankan, we have a sovereign country. So we decide what we want. But especially when you are going into the integration into so many blocks, you are losing your sovereignty. So the issue is the political gains or the economic gains versus your sovereignty. So are you prepared to give up your sovereignty, and somebody is taking a decision in a common way, right? For you also, right? When you go, we'll write. So what is the economic, regional economic integration is? So bringing certain countries into one block, right? Into one block. So if you can give all one example, I think in the next slides is very clearly explained, right? You can just see. So it's an agreement among the countries in a geographic region. So just imagine European Union, a geographic region, or Sri Lanka in ASEAN, South Asian region, or ASEAN in the ASEAN region. Can you read this? Can you read it? Yeah. You can read. Is it you want to pull this up? Oh. Right. So to reduce, ultimately remove tariffs and non-tariff barriers to the free flow of trade, services, factors of production between each other. Right. Now this is a very catchword. What is the tariff barrier and what is the non-tariff barrier? To remove tariff barrier and non-tariff barrier. What is your idea? And it says to remove. So for the free trade, for the goods to flow from one country to another country or one region to another region, so there are some barriers to the trade. So by integrating, we are removing the barriers. So there are two types of barriers to international trade. One is the tariff barrier. The other one is the non-tariff barrier. What is the tariff barrier? Exactly. So import basis taxes are tariff barrier. But you must be very careful when it comes to the Sri Lanka. When they talk about tariff is only they are talking about the customs duty. But in Sri Lanka, import tax bases are not only customs duty, VAT, PAN, excise duty, then what else? So many things, right? So when you talk about tariff, they are only talking about the customs duty, right? So good example is the tariff barrier is a customs duty or import-based taxes. So that will have an impact on the international trade, right? Okay. So what is non-tariff barriers? Exactly. So that means any barriers, those are procedures other than the taxes. So if you are Sri Lankan law says, if you want to bring these goods, then you must have these taxes, this what you call, not the taxes, but the license, quota, then what you call, cumbersome procedures, number of documentations, time taken, and those things are all non-tariff barriers, right? So those are two types of barriers. So one is the, like we pointed out, So all this time we were talking about 3 examples. The non-tariff barriers we have imposed is, some are coming under temporary license. Yes, that is a non-tariff barrier. Some are coming under the license. Yes, that is a non-tariff barriers. And even the payment terms is also non-tariff, because it's not going to help international trade to flow smoothly, predictability, and fast as possible. Okay, right. Then what is the next word? What is factors of production? What is factors of production? Movement, a free movement of factors of production. What is factors of production? Entrepreneurs. Yeah. So one is the land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur trades. So by doing the regional integration, these factors of production can freely move between the nations. Say, for example, if you take EU, right? You can move the what you call finance or capital from one country to another country without any problem, right? Okay. Factors of production, right? Now, when you talk about the revenue, now these I'm just taking you out of this context. When you talk about the state revenue, what are the 2 areas or broader areas where they get the revenue from? 2 broader areas. Where do they get the revenue? Any government? Yeah. Yes. So that you are saying tax revenue, right? That is, one is tax revenue. The other one is broader. The first one is, he pointed out and he gave the example, import taxes and the income taxes. Those are tax revenue. What are the other source of revenue for a government? So it is tax revenue. The other one is non-tax revenue. Right? What is non-tax revenue? One example. One minute. Yeah, service charges. Yes. License fees. Yes. What else? Yes, profit on government corporation. Profit, yeah, profit, not taxes, right? Okay. So there are also, you get 2 types. One is the capital and the other one is the current. So the current is what you say for example, if you are speeding your car, police stops and give you a penalty for 10,000 or say 10,000 rupees. That's the income for the government, non-tax revenue, current. If they sell a property in one of the areas to a Chinese company and they get the revenue, so that is the non-tax revenue, but that's a capital revenue, not the current. Okay, right. So now we will consider it on the tax revenue, right? So tax revenues are broad, two broad categories. What are the 2 broad categories? Tax revenue. He gave 2 examples. One is, he says income tax. Other one he says import tax. So how do you call it in the broader category? One, yes, direct tax and indirect tax. So what, in your example, what is direct tax? You gave 2 examples. So what is direct tax and what is indirect tax? One is direct, one is indirect. One is income tax is direct tax and the import tax is indirect tax. So what is the difference between the direct tax and the indirect tax? Yes, very good. So what he says is, indirect taxes are the person who is paying in the indirect tax is not taking the brunt. He is passing to somebody else. So the person who pays is somebody, the person who takes the tax is somebody else. Right, okay. That's a very good answer. Yes, but another small answer, difference. That is one very good answer. So if you are paying your direct taxes, that cannot be transferred. But if you are paying the indirect taxes, yes, that can be transferred. Right. Now, for example, now if you are an importer and you bring a car, so you pay the taxes for your car and that becomes the indirect taxes, right? Then after that, you bring it here and make a profit and out of the profit, you pay your corporate tax. That becomes direct tax. Okay, right. So what is the main difference? I told you both example. From that, can you just imagine what is the another very important distinction between these two? But based on the earnings, yes. Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, based indirect tax are always based on your spending. Indirect tax you spend, and the direct tax are based on your earnings, right? Okay, more than that, you are coming closer to that. Some more with examples. With the example, you can just imagine what it is, right? So you are telling about this now. Spending on what? But can I say indirect taxes are, so indirect taxes are levied on goods and services. You agree? So you bring a car, you are paying indirect tax, not because of you love the something, you pay for your car. So indirect taxes are always taxes levied on goods and services, whereas direct taxes are levied on person or entity. Right? Haley's group, they are paying the corporate tax, or I am paying my salary tax. So that tax is levied on me, not on any goods. So levied on corporate or this, right? But indirect taxes are levied on goods and services. Okay. What's the point? So this is the main point. So levied on goods and services and levied on individual companies or entities and so on. Okay. Right. After that, what you say is perfect, transferable, non-transferable, and you say it is on earning and it is on spending. Okay. Right. Now, who is responsible for the indirect tax and who is responsible for the direct tax? Collection. Direct tax, Inland Revenue Department, yes. Indirect tax, customs, who else? Excise, yes. Who else? Inland Revenue Department, yes, because they collect VAT. So VAT on the goods, right? Even though we may collect, or sometimes they may pay tax, collect on the local sales and so on. So indirect taxes are basically collected by both three: customs, Inland Revenue Department, and the excise for the time, right? So bulk of the indirect taxes are collected by customs. That's what we say 63% of the revenue is collected by the customs and so on, right? So this is where you must understand, right? Understand the significance of the taxation system, because when you understand only, you can understand this barrier of tariff, right? So when you remove the barriers, then automatically your customs revenue will come down, right? So if you go for more free trade agreements or regional integration, definitely customs will come down, because you are going to give a concessionary rate for the what you call the product comes from the free trade agreement and so on, right? So that's what I just want to bring your history. So now this is understandable, right? Okay. So in the recent past, so this is what you call regional economic integration is a trend, right? So you take the whole world, there are 200, 300 agreement, but depends on the level of agreement, right? So it can be free trade agreement, then SAFTA, then we have so many agreements like bilateral. How many bilateral agreements we have? Sri Lanka is having bilateral. How many? How many bilateral agreements? SAFTA is not a bilateral, no?
India, we have different.
Yeah. Then what else? Pakistan, what else? So far only 2 bilateral agreements: Indo-Sri Lanka ISFTA, Indo-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement between India and Sri Lanka. Then we have the Pakistan-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement between Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Then we had one with Singapore, but during the last regime, but unfortunately for some reason it has been held up. Then now we are having a negotiation with Bangladesh, and even last time when the foreign minister of China came, and he was furious because he thinks that Sri Lanka is not taking any steps to enter into their free trade agreement with China. Is taking so long time. So in future we may have a bilateral agreement with China also. So on the card, China, Bangladesh, and Singapore. But already we have Pakistan and India. Right. Then regional agreement, how many regional agreement we have? SAARC, SAPTA, EFTA, so on. So that is among SAARC countries or South Asian countries. So likewise, you get ASEAN, then NAFTA, EU, so many 200, 300, 400 agreements are open. So that is the trend of the day. Right. So why countries move towards regional integration? Why? Why countries are moving? One is more a political cloud, right? So when you are alone, you don't have the guts. So when you are together, you as a block, you have a trading block, so some bargaining powers, right? Then attract free FDIs. So one example I can say, you have to be more practical. Say when we entered this ISFTA, Indo-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, then some about 400 of items of Sri Lankan items were able to get into the Indian market at a concessionary rate. So now if your tariff, how many of you are seeing the tariff? I think most of you have seen the tariff, right? So how many columns are there? Vertical columns. One is general. Do you agree with that? There's a general rate of duty. General. The other one is what this side, left side. There are so many columns. How many there? That is preferential. So there are preferential. So there are two types of preferential. There are different, like ISFTA, those different. So basically you have two. One is the general rate of duty, other one is the preferential rate of duty. So general rate of duty, we call it the MFN rates, most favored nations rate, right? MFN, right? That's the normal language. So when you are answering a question paper, if you say general rate of duty, I will give you 2 marks. If you say MFN rate of duty, I'll give you 5 marks. So these terminologies are very important, right? Most favored nations rate. So that means what? Most favored nations rate. So if you go to the WTO or GATT, what they say is, Article 1 says, every trading partner should be treated equal. So you cannot treat a different way. So everybody is your most favored nations. So your general rate of duties for everybody, whether it is import from China, whether it is from China, UK, whether from India, everybody is treated together, and that is the most favored nations. Right. Then Article 24 says, then if you are having a regional agreement, free trade agreement, yes, you may have a free trade agreement. So that is what we call the preferential rate agreement. So the general rate of duty is the MFN, most favored nation. So everybody has to be treated. So if you are giving a concession to somebody, you have to give everyone the same concession, except when you are entering into the free trade agreement or regional integration and so on. Okay. So your general rate of duty is the MFN rate. Okay. Right. So attract now. So we came to that to attract FDI. So when the free trade agreement was signed, I think in 2001, I am not too sure. Then most of the people, investors came into Sri Lanka, not because they love Sri Lanka, because they were targeting the Indian huge market. So because from Sri Lanka, about 4,000 items can get into the Indian market under the Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, Sri Lanka-India Free Trade Agreement. So what they do is they come and invest in Sri Lanka and make your product and send it to India. Then they will be better position when this product goes and get a concession rate under the ISFTA against others MFN rate. So MFN rate is always higher than the preferential rate of duty, right? So then by getting to the free trade agreement or integration, you are attracting more foreign direct investment to come in to Sri Lanka because you are targeting the Indian market, which is a huge market, right? Population and so on, right? So one way of attracting the FDIs. Then what else? Yes. Right. Now, in the FDI or foreign direct investment, there are 4 types of investment people are interested normally. What are the 4 types? Why they come to a place like Sri Lanka? Of course, there's a market for India, those things like. But in the normal run, one is the what they call is the first investment is that is what they call it. Yeah, so then natural resources. So when you have natural resources, then people are interested in coming and say, for example, now you can see then former minister was telling that we have in Mannar Basin, there are gases and there are what you call, so we don't have the technology. So some foreign direct investors come and invest because there are some natural resources. So that is the reason they come to now even in Mannar, they can say people are agitating there because some Australian company is getting the heavy sand for their ilmenite or something like that, right? So when you have a natural resource, say for example, in Nigeria, most of the companies went there because they have the rich oil resources, right? But there is a disadvantage. Why? So it can have an impact on your environment. So now in Mannar, people are agitating, don't allow this to mine this, because once they, after mining, the half part of Mannar will be under sea, because when you dig all these things, sea erosion will happen. So there is always a problem with the natural environmental issues. And this is one type of investment. The other one is market seeking. So why Coca-Cola is coming and investing in Sri Lanka? So what is the best way? So when your standards of living are coming up, then you also tend to go for better, right? Coca-Cola, KFC, then you go for a better this thing when your standard of living, your earning capacity comes. So the 2 things Coca-Cola can do, what they can do, they can import the Coca-Cola in a pot. Is one way. Then in that case, what they do, they have to pay a heavy price as duty and so on. So what they do? So they set up the bottle plant in Sri Lanka, and bottling is done. Essence is coming from elsewhere, and the bottling is done here. So then they want to see to capture the market, because of the market is going up. The people's what you call spending power is coming up. So they can always market seeking this thing. So what they're trying to do is jump the tariff. So if they want to import, they have to pay the tariff, but not importing, they do the manufacturing in Sri Lanka so that they can most effectively done it. Right. So that is market seeking. So you have a market in Sri Lanka. So that is now, even with all these difficulties, people are coming and investing because they see some day it will come, right? The third one is efficiency seeking. So you have some efficient something in Sri Lanka. So one example, garment industries. Why most of the garment industries are coming to Sri Lanka? Because they have the efficient labor with the costs. So that they want to make capital out of that. Right. So the last one is strategic asset seeking. What is that meaning? What is the strategic asset seeking? You have in Sri Lanka, why people are coming and investing in what? Like places like Sigiriya, places like beaches, places like upcountry. Those are very strategic assets. That these are unique assets which no other country will have. These beaches, lovely beaches, like so they come and invest and build up a hotel and those things. So 4 types of investment will happen. The first one is natural resources seeking. Then the second one is market seeking. Then the third one is efficiency. The fourth one is the strategic assets, right? Right. Now, these are types of FDI, right? So now, when this integration happens, to overcome threat posed by the other country, so when you are in one block, so you are always getting a better say. Like that's what EU was able to become third major force in the world after USA and China, third because of the 26 countries together, one block, right? And by doing that, they can always, but the last point, have a favorable balance of payment. What do you mean by favorable balance of payment? Their exports is always par with the imports, because imports you can't help, because when you have a choice, people will definitely buy, right? Say for example, if you have money, you will go for either a local cheese or a imported cheese. So when you have money, you will definitely go for a imported chocolate. This for that you need money. Then you have to match that by having a export oriented company. So they are, when the importers come and FDI, bring the FDI into Sri Lanka and send the goods to India. So then your export market booms. So there is a way to balance your import bill, right? So you are attracting this. So that is one of the reasons of this, right? Now, right. So there are some levels of integrations. As I told you, there are so many levels, right? Level of integrations. I think this is not clear, right? The first one is the very basic one. So that is only free trade area. That is where we are today, right? So free trade area, that is the least integration ever can happen. So only thing is we agree with some country or group of country, the goods and services will be, without any duty, it can move freely, right? But here it talks about 2 things, goods and services. In our Indo-Sri Lanka free trade agreement, is it only the goods or both goods and services? Free trade agreements in our country, all the free trade agreements are only goods, no services. So now we are not even basic FTA. So we are minus, right? Right. So that time, can you remember probably about 10 years ago? Then India and Sri Lanka voted to sign a CEPA. How many of you all know? What do you call comprehensive economic partnership agreement, whereby they wanted to bring the service also. But there are professionals in Sri Lanka objected because they can't with an Indian service. It can be medical or it can be legal, it can be anything, even the hairdressers and so on. But that never happened, right? So the first and the primitive is regional integration level is FTA. But this FTA talks about both goods and services, right? The next one is customs union. So there the agreement is free trade agreement, no tariffs, plus common external trade policy. Can you identify the word common external trade policy? So that is the next integration, right? Third one is common market. So this plus free movement of factors of production. So every time one is added, free movements of factors of production, that is the land, labor, capital plus the entrepreneurship, free movement of this thing. So the next one is common currency and tax rates. All these plus common currency and tax rates. That is where the EU is there. They are using the euro for everyone, right? And the tax rate is the same wherever you go, right? And the common monetary and fiscal policy. So what is monetary policy and what is fiscal policy? So customs comes under which policy? Is it monetary or fiscal? Fiscal. So that is the rate applicable for imports and taxes and so on. So that is basically a fiscal policy, spending and income. How do you get the income? Taxation. And how do you spend that? Then monetary policy is about the flow of money. That is where inflation, those things like, right? So both monetary and fiscal policy when it comes to economic union. Then the last one is the political union. That is a common, parliament and so on like that, right? So here what happens? So you may get an economic growth by getting into that, but at the expenses of your sovereignty. So your sovereignty is lost. Individually, you are not you can't say I am from France, because most of the things are but done by the EU head office. So France does not have its own currency, own policies, and so it's a common policy for everyone. So everything is a matter whether your sacrifice of your sovereignty against the gain of the integration. So that is the question somebody has to answer. So every time you go further, you are losing your sovereignty as a nation, right? Okay, right. So if you can see that the next one, right. So I think I don't know how I get this then. So it shows the level of integrity, right? So from free trade area, and when you move towards the political union, more integrated, but losing your sovereignty, right? Right, political case for integration. Countries, when they are together, have more economic plot to enhance their trade with other countries or trading blocks. So this is the case in EU versus USA. So if EU is one country, then it's very difficult to match with the USA. When EU is together, they are equal to the USA. They have the bargain power and so on. So that is the political case for integration. So economic integrations, because you have the FDI, then economic growth, unrestricted free movements, and so on, right? So the next one is what are the barriers to integrations? It's very hard to achieve, because you have to talk to, because EU was speaking to everybody, how many years, then nation may benefit, but sometimes the group may be not benefit. Say for example, that's now NAFTA, right? NAFTA is a North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement between USA, Canada, and Brazil. Mexico, Canada, and USA. So can you remember when Donald Trump was there as a president of USA? He said, I am going to cancel all this FTA with NAFTA. What is the saying is, most of the US firm has shifted to third country actually Mexico because of the cheap labor, right? So they want to make sure. So because of that, most of the companies shifted from USA to Mexico because they came under one this thing. So the most of the companies shifting. So most of the most of the US citizens lost all employment because the employment is mostly shifted from here. So he said this is a very bad what you call economic gain to gain to USA because there are lots of like that this like so of course, and sometimes say for example a country can gain but certain section of the country may not gain, right? The country can gain as a whole but certain section like employment in IT sector they may lose, right? Because the shift is going for a better efficient seeking places. Then potential loss of sovereignty, as I told you. So when you more integrated, your sovereignty is lost and control over domestic issues are lost. You can't take a decision. The decision is taken for everyone. So you don't have a control. So if somebody is agitating in Sri Lanka for this, then you can't control because already it is being a common this thing like. So bigger and powerful nations will have the advantage over small and this. So like for example, that's what say there is. So if you look at the Indo-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, if you really look at it for the purpose of statistics, they may say, right, we have allowed 4,000 items from Sri Lanka to get into the Indian market free of this thing. So if you look at the 4,000, Sri Lanka will never make those in their life. Helicopter, free. So if you export helicopter from Sri Lanka to India, it is free. But who is going to export helicopter from Sri Lanka? But statistically, yes, we are given 4,000 tariff line free. But practically, no. So because the balance of payment between the two nations are one giant and one a small nation. So it's always the giant is always having a better distance, right? So that will happen because smaller country will lose because they don't have a cloud to see. So if you look at the, for example, when you enter in the free trade agreement, you will have one is the we will talk when we talks about the one session called session 4, what you call rules of origin and free trade agreement. So we will talk in detail, but for the time being, so they will have a positive list. So what is positive list? The list of items which can get into the other country with the concessionary rate, and they will have a negative list. So these items will never get a concessionary rate. So for example, Sri Lanka will not allow tea from India to come into that and with the concessionary rate because we know it's going to affect our own production. So we will put tea under negative list. Then after certain hour, 5 years, certain item will jump from the negative list to positive list. That's the agreement says. So if you really look at that in numbers, they may say, yes, we are given 4,000 items to Sri Lanka to bring it as a duty free, and we also got 4,000 to bring it to India duty free. But technically speaking, whether those 4,000 are realistic, but statistically, yes, they say yes, 4,000 we gave and they gave 4,000, but practically whether it is, it's possible. So these things are, yes, these are all, that's what we are reluctant to enter into an agreement with China, right? Because it's a very giant, this thing, right? Right, okay. Then, right, now the other one is trade creation and trade diversion. What do you mean by trade creation? Say, for example, if a production line is coming to an efficient place, right? For example, a garment factory operated in a Western country, coming to Sri Lanka because of the labor, these things, so efficient labor, right? So is it a trade creation? Yes, because the trade is created because it's coming from a Trade is created, right? For example, so if you are looking at a garment factory, and I'm just taking one example, operating in a Western country, the cost may be say $10 for a piece. So if you are shifting the same thing to a least, so like country like Sri Lanka, where the efficient labor is there, probably you can produce that $10 to $5. So the trade is created. Okay. So that if the trade is created, again, the regional integration is success. FTAs are success. Trade is created. So more creation of trade means more income to somebody and more development, more employment, and so on. Trade is created, right? Right. Most of the things are trade is diverted. So it's not going to help. Matter of from here, you plug from here, right? So one example is when is trade diverted means when you say, for example, now in India and we have China, a particular product, say it cost in India, say now I put it in Sri Lankan rupees, so it's easy for understanding. Say the cost in India is 10,000 CIF. So here you can get it, same item, 8,000 CIF. Now we are in Sri Lanka. So we don't have any agreement with India. We don't have agreement with China, right? So what is the rate applicable here? When it comes from those countries, what is the rate of duty applicable? I was telling one very good word. What is the rate? General rate, because there's no free trade agreement, no concession rate. So what is the general rate is known as MFN rate, right? What is the MFN rate? You say 30%, right? So what will be the cost of, say 30% means 2,400. So 10,400, the cost to import. Here, 3,000. So it is 30%, and here also 30%. So where do you import from? Where do you import from? China, because that is the most efficient this thing, right? Okay. Suppose you are entering into a agreement under the ISFTA. Under the ISFTA, you enter into an agreement, and that particular item is coming under the ISFTA. Now the concession rate is 10%. So the 30% is 2,400, right? 10,400, right? So now concession rate under the ISFTA, duty is free for that item. Now where do you import from? Now where do you import from? You will import from directly from India, because the cost is 10,000 only. Whereas in the China, it is more than that, right? Now what happens? The trade has been diverted from an efficient source from an inefficient source. You agreed or not? So trade is being diverted because of the free trade agreement, right? You got the point? So now, naturally, where do you import? From the most efficient cost. But here, China being the most efficient cost, but still we choose to import from India because of the free trade agreement. So the trade is diverted. The first one we were told, trade is created, the first one. So here, because of the agreement, the trade is diverted. So your integration, FTA and all, it will be better, it will serve the international trade when the trade creation exceed the trade diversion. Then only it's worth internationally. Otherwise, there's no point because only matter of shifting from China trade to India trade. That's all. But globally, it's not going to help you out. So when you talk about the FTAs, if you talk about the regional integrations, whether it is trade unions or any levels of integration, the world trade will be better off only when trade creation exceeds the trade diversion. Right? Yeah. What is trade creation? What is trade creation? The creation is with new partners in customs union. So new partners mean you are going with the new partners, like from shifting from here to here. Then the trade creation diversion is with the rest of the world, right? So you are diverting the with the rest of the world. So from shifting this to the from China to India, right? So the next one is trade creation, trade diversion. Yes. Right. Yeah, trade creation is switch from high cost domestic production to low cost foreign production. So that is where high cost to the low cost, from high cost any other country to low cost Sri Lanka. That is creation. Diversion is switch from cost low cost foreign supplier, that is from China, to high cost foreign supplier of a partner country, because India is a partner country under the ISFTA. Right. Right. Now just discuss, don't take this. So this Switzerland is not under the EU. Why? They are all in the EU. You know that Switzerland is not under EU. Even when UK was there, they had their different currency. They are the sterling pound, not euro. Switzerland is having the Swiss franc, right? So why Switzerland is not a member of EU right from the start? Why is that? Simple as this. What they say is, we don't get involved with this, that World War II and all. So we want our independence, we want our sovereignty, and we will not be a part of this union. And what they say is, because when you allow this, the union, because of the free movement of free factors of labor moving from other country to Switzerland, so Switzerland is paid high, then they think when the others come, they might, other migrants come and down the salary level. So when the when the migrant goes, they are prepared to work for any salary level. So that means the quality of the standards of the Swiss people will come down because the salary level comes down. So we don't want to be part of it. So that is one reason they said we are not going to be part of it. But they are part of the very first one, free trade agreement with any European country. So they are, when they import and export between the European Union, they get everything, right? Free tariff movements and everything, but no movements of the production, the cost of what you call this factors of production and all. Right. Then in 2000, what do you call it, EU, sorry, not EU, then UK also came out, that is called the famous Brexit. So they came out of EU, and now they are not in the EU. Earlier they were in the EU, but of course they were using their own currency, sterling pounds. Right now they were in the EU, and now they referendum 48% voted to be with continue with the EU, and 52% voted to come out of EU, right? So their problem is also, they are worried about the refugees, and especially when the world is not clear, even from the refugees from Middle East, refugees from other countries might come and disturb the value of the UK. So that's what Britain exited. That's what Brit exit. There's a famous things. So one of the questions may be, because as I told you, these are both economical interests, political interests, and the environment interests. So these integration are not only purely economic one. It is more than the, because as I told you, when you move towards, your sovereignty is losing, and you don't have a control over these things. So it is not only economic theory, but also the political theory plus the environmental theory, right? That decides whether you are fit into that or not, right? Then we talk about this is the European Union. Yes. Yeah, this is why Switzerland is not a member. Right. Then Euro. These are political criteria, then economic criteria. So we are talking about the NFTA. There is North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement between USA, then Mexico, and Canada. So this is what this is talking about the ASEAN, right? So another block, then ASEAN countries, these APEC countries. So these are all the thing, and we will be talking more about this free trade agreement pertaining to Sri Lanka when we talk about the full session to rules of origin, then how the rules of origin criteria are met, wholly produce, then transformation and so on, ABC, and that is more important to you as a customs officials. So that we will be talking about. So this is actually a, what do you call, so this is APEC, and all these things are actually self-explanatory, just to give you some examples what is happening around the world, right? So that's all for the time being. And I think these are the two sessions I am supposed to do when it comes to the international trade. Dr. Trevor Mendes will be doing the balance. Then from next semester, starting from July, I think we'll be spending about 10 continuous hours with the valuation of international trade. And parallelly, I think Mr. Jara Perra will be taking this HS, harmonized system, and this, right? And there are 4 more things to come. One is the rules of origin and FTAs, and the other one is the, now we are starting with the technical subjects. So as well, then I know very frankly, you can ask whoever followed classes here. It's only, as I told the very first day, don't break your heads, enjoy your life with your families and so, right? It's a matter of managing the time. So we are not here to just see from A to Z to whether this done. As long as you can demonstrate that you are taking some reasonable care in interpreting this thing, that's fine with us. And we will be, frankly, I don't want to discuss with other this thing. And we will be discussing all the, like in short, whether it is a, of my area I can vouch. So I'm taking about 3 or 4 sessions, 3 or 4 subjects. So especially individual assignment, we'll be discussing the parameters. Then group assignments also, we are discussing parameters, and even your whether it's a takeaway home or exam or open book exam, we will be discussing the area where you are supposed to concentrate. So it's not going to, I'm not going to give the question, but anyway, we will discuss in the area where we are. So you can always choose between. So that's the end of the day, because it's not the children to memorize and come and do. And it's mostly, it's a technical area. So application, practical application. I don't want to see the theory part of it, right? That's the terminology is very important. So if you tell me general rate of duty and MFN, the turn of terminology is 100% difference, right? And one good terminology will save thousands of words. If you give MFN means you don't want to explain anything other than that. Everybody knows. So this is very important. As a professional, you must have those type of things, right? And when you go and put up a report, those things are very important. I don't know if people will understand or not. These are the things. So make a culture and write down all these things. And what my advice is, if you come across certain things, take a note and note it and keep it. That will help you someday, one day, right? Don't leave that go. Because if you happen to see a paper or if you happen to see a news article which is going to affect your life, for example, yesterday's this thing like doing away with the open account. So just see what is happening, what is that. So take a note and keep it. That will help you when you answering your question, right? Okay, thank you so much. Now it's almost 5 o'clock. We will close it, and hopefully by next July onwards, we'll be meeting again. So in the meantime, if you have any doubt as far as your subjects is concerned, any customs like HS code or hosting, now I am working on a new book on the 2022 version of HS these things. So we will be discussing that also. So in the meantime, if you have any problem in the in this class or in your day-to-day affairs, if you have any problem, you can always call me, but introduce me where you are talking from, right? And I can, yeah, please. One minute. Valuation. There is a problem. I have thing, but I can give you a. You can always, like the last class also, what I want is to get a photocopy, but nowadays photocopy is much expensive than this thing. I'm sorry, I don't have any copy, but last time what I did, I allowed everybody to get the photo. I don't want to worry about this, copying, right, and those things. Because I about 2,000, 3,000 copies, I have, now it's very difficult to print it because of the cost structure and so on. So two things you can do. One is you can approach somebody because they have already used most of the things are brand new books are there with them. They would have never seen even the page. So if you can catch, because of me, they would have bought. So if you can catch, that is as good as a new copy, right? That is number one. Number two, any friends and those things, especially in the customs. Number three, if you are affordable, then go for a photocopy, right? I am not worried about copyright and those things. But in the meantime, I am also searching whether I can get something from my known people who are retired, but some are not willing to spare it because they want to just have it. Anyway, we'll see how best we can do. Anyway, we'll be starting from there July 1st week, right? Oh, what else? But no, photocopies, I think I know this time is much expensive, but if you can get it much earlier, it's always better. Otherwise, even if you have money, you won't have the papers to print. The time to come. Okay, thank you.